Hey everybody, today I'm making a spread with Distress Inks in my Action Art Journal. It's a square journal with mixed media paper and it has two different kind of paper textures. One is super smooth and the other side is textured, and it's always alternating in that book, and I'm working on the smooth side today because I am working with one of my favorite techniques, stencil smooshing with inks onto the page. I got some small Distress ink pads because I wanted to try this technique, laying up more colors on the stencil and then making a texture on the paper. And with bigger pads that does not work because they are too big. You cannot use so many colors. What's important with this technique is use enough water, because otherwise you will end up like I'm doing it here. It's just a little bit of texture on the paper, not very interesting. But that's the case with this technique. You never know what you get. But I made the experience that with all the pages I made with this technique, they turned out pretty in the end, so I just keep on working. I added more water to that stencil, which is, by the way, the Marks number 3. It's quite new and available in our shop. I will link it in the video description. I just added more water and I press it down quite well to the page, and that gave me a better texture. Not perfect, but let's see how this page will take us. I will now pick another stencil with more solid areas, and hopefully I will get more ink to my paper. I'm working with a certain color palette that I put together with the Distress Inks, and it's Bundled Sage, Wild Honey, Abundant Coral, the Ground Espresso. I have 4 colors. I just don't know at the moment which one. I hope when I see it that I can remember, but I will write the colors in the video description so you can check that out. I'm a bit afraid that my Bundled Sage is not very full of ink. I only have the small ink pad of this color and I have no re-inker so far, and I'm a bit afraid that it was not really full when I got it. I ordered a bunch of these recently and I have the feeling some of them are juicy and some of them are not. I also got the refresher spray for the ink pads or for the Distress products, because sometimes I feel the pads are quite dry, but I haven't used them very much, though they are usually not empty. I don't know, I have to play with this a bit and see what I find out. If you know something or have any tips regarding the Distress inks and about how dry they are sometimes, or how often you refill them, or if you're using the refresher spray, please let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to know more, because I have a lot of Distress inks and I use them, but I don't use them as often, just sometimes. And recently I really enjoy playing with them more. Yeah, I really love what I got here. The texture, it's amazing. It's a wonderful pattern. I really like that, and I will bring it to the other page as well. I'm picking up the ink from the stencil with a brush and just play on the page a bit, blending the pattern to the background. I really like how this turned out so far. I wanted to have more of that bundle sage on my page, and this is what I'm going to do in my next step. I try to bring in more of that color. That's also something I'm not sure about. Let me know if it's normal that this ink is so light and soft, or yeah, if it's usually should be more inky. I don't know. Unfortunately, so far I was not able to get a reinker for this color, but I will definitely get one because I really love this shade of green. And yeah. I really love the texture I got here, but it's so, just a little bit for the amount of ink I put on there. It's just so not enough, I would say. Too weak and not very strong. I try it again because I love that area that printed so nicely over the top here. And I try to get that result again. I will try to bring in a bit more of that bundle sage with the ink itself and a brush. I bet I'm now clearing that ink pad even more by using it so much, but well, I don't have any other option, I would say. In my next step, I plan to add a layer with the ground espresso, but first I'm going to dry the whole spread completely because I want to build up layers and not that everything mixes together. For that dark layer with the ground espresso, I decided to pick the big ink pad because I want to have quite big areas on top of the page of these ones. I really love that cross texture, and I'm using our crosshead stencil. The wavy stencil I've used was, by the way, the organic number 2. I really like that. I like how this pops up against the light background and brings in that negative space. And also I really like the color palette, but I picked this beforehand, so I was quite sure that the colors will work quite well together. I'm going to add more layers of that ground espresso to the page because I really like it, and I think it makes the light background pop even more because of the dark of this ink. I let that background dry, and now I'm coming in with some stamping, and I now can remember that I also used the antique linen with my color palette. And here I picked the antique linen with the Distress Oxide, and I'm just stamping some background images on top of the Distress inks. And with the Oxide, that works quite well because they are more opaque, and especially when you layer a lighter color up on a darker background, it will show up. I will link up the stamp set I'm using for the background stamping in the video description, and it's one of our new stamp sets, the Mix It Up number 5. And I will also use the Mix It Up number 6. They are both quite nice, and I think they work really well together. For the other images, I'm using the Distress inks that I've used for the background. Usually, I do not recommend that you should use Distress inks for stamping because they don't give you a very crisp image. It always depends a bit on the paper you're using them on. They tend to bleed into the paper a bit. So for a crisp outline, I would always go for Versafine Clair or StazOn. But as this is just background stamping, I am using them here in the same colors that I used for the background. And this makes everything more cohesive, as if I would have used another ink. I picked a bigger stamp from the Mix It Up number 6 with some script, and I don't want the complete stamp to show up on the page, I just want some areas. And you have two options. You can just use the stamp purely without an acrylic block and then just dip it on your page, or you can use the smaller ink pads and do not ink everything, so it also is bleeding a bit into the background more. Sometimes I feel background stamps don't look good when you ink them up fully and stamp them fully. I think they look good when you touch the page here and there. And with this technique, by inking not the whole stamp, it's also quite nice. I laid a piece of foam underneath my page to make sure I can stamp properly. I wanted to have some splatters on my page, and I'm picking the wild honey in the Oxide version, and I just press it to my glass plate, spritz it with water, and then I'm going to make some splatters. I'm using quite a big brush here to make some more chunky and bigger splatters, but I didn't like that so much, or I found there are not enough, so I will just repeat the process with a smaller brush. Whilst my background is drying, I'm going to prepare a focal image. I wanted to use a butterfly on this spread, and I'm using one from our grungy butterflies, and here you see me stamping it to the Canson Mix Media paper. I think I've used the Versafine Clear ink because on a porous surface it's the best ink for a crisp image. I just cut that out, and I'm now going to color that in with the same Distress ink colors that I've used for the background. With big ink pads, I like to press the lid to the ink pad, and then I have some ink on the inside of the lid, and I'm using this to pick it up with my water brush and to color in stamped images. That technique with pressing the lid on does not work for the small ink pads, so I just press this to my glass plate. I already had two botanicals that I have stamped in the past in my stash, and I wanted to color those in with the bundled sage, and as you know, it's not very colorful, and I'm using a piece of a baking mat here as my surface to work on, but that color does not show up really well. You almost can't see it, and that's was where I decided to mix myself kind of a bundled sage color, just more intense. And I'm not sure which colors I've been using. I hopefully can see it when I do it on camera. I think I used the brush Corduroy. I can't pronounce that color right, and I think this should be the Evergreen Bough, which is a cool green color, and it's similar to the bundle sage, just not as dirty, I would say, and that is why I mixed in that brownish color. I'm just mixing them quickly, not 100%, so I get a little bit of different shades, and I think that that's quite nice as a green for this page. Not so different to the bundle sage, but quite more intense. My page is dry, and I have pulled out some papers from my stash that have similar colors, and this green here is also perfect. It looks like the bundled sage, and with the brown texture on it, it's perfect. I picked some orange yellow colors and some in that light pink reddish tones, and I'm just adhering a collage where I want to put my focal image later. I also decided to add a little bit more stamping with the word create that I've already used on the background, and here I'm using it with the ground espresso, and I just stamp around that collage area. I will now see if the elements I have made will fit my page, and I really like them. on top of this collaged area. I will also add a little bit of collage to the left page, just some tiny pieces to make everything cohesive with the other side of the spread. And I'm picking the same papers that I've used on the right side. I think I wanted to make a sentiment on the left side of the page, maybe with some bigger letters stamped here or a die cut. I don't know. At this stage, I will try that out, and I will adhere the elements with some wet glue to the right side of the page, and I will leave you with some photos how I finished this up. And this is what I did. I made a sentiment with the word dream from our affirmation stamp set, and I adhered the main images. Yes, and that is my page for today. I hope you enjoyed that video and you are inspired, and I wish you a lovely weekend. Bye.